So my name is Rachelle. I'm an athletic therapist at Athletic Center, and back there is my coworker, part owner of the clinic, and that's Sarah. So the Athletic Center, we're near Uptown on Cary, and we're basically an athletic therapy clinic. We also have physiotherapy and massage therapy, but the majority of us are athletic therapists and active athletes ourselves, and we offer sort of a combination of all those therapy services as well as strength and conditioning. So we think of sort of the injury and rehab process as sort of an ongoing, continuous thing. So we have a clinic space where it's sort of half gym, half treatment tables. And so my thing is that we want to move from that table side to the gym side and back and forth and kind of keep you active. So we have like packages, and then we also just do acute injury assessment and rehab. So if you sprain your ankle tomorrow, then we can help you with that. Or if you want to learn to lift hundreds of pounds, we can help you with that too. So today specifically, we're talking about good versus bad pain, or being sore versus being injured, and then what do we do about it? So if you guys have any questions about anything that I say, like don't wait, just like yell something out. And I might touch on it later, or maybe I'll answer your question right there. And if there's anything in particular that you want to know that I don't cover, then definitely ask me that too. So let's get started. So this is basically what we're going to talk about today. Good sore versus bad sore, and then what are we going to do about it? Has anyone heard the word DOMS before? Okay. So when we think of bad sore, which is an injury, and we think of good sore, which is the fancy word for it is DOMS. And so DOMS is short for delayed onset muscle soreness. So it's basically like when you're sore after doing a workout or doing a sport, or it comes from changing your activity. So maybe you normally run and then you decided to run more kilometers than you normally do. And then you're sore after. So that's a change in activity. Or maybe you play baseball and you're like, I'm going to try playing golf. And it seems like it's close, but you're sore after. And that's just because you did something different. And so that can be your body adapting to the change and the difference. There's different research and kind of different opinions on what DOMS actually is, whether it's like mini tears in your muscle or whether it comes from a buildup of lactic acid. But it's not an injury. It doesn't mean that you should sit around and do nothing and look after it and baby it. DOMS usually feels better with more movement. And so we're going to talk about a little bit more about that as well. So how do we know if I'm actually injured or if I just have DOMS? So I'm in pain. I went for a long bike ride yesterday and my knees are sore. So is it DOMS or is it an actual injury? So there's a couple questions that we want to ask ourselves anytime that we're feeling pain if we're not sure. So the most obvious is it deformed? Is my knee bending the wrong way? If it's deformed, you're injured, maybe you need to go to the hospital. If it's not that obvious, then we're going to think about, is it sharp? So has anyone heard of this SHARP before? Meredith probably has. So it's an acronym, and it stands for swelling, heat, altered function, which basically means it's not working the same way that it normally works. It's red or it's bruised, and it's pain bigger than a 3 out of 10. So if you have all those things, then it's probably not DOMS, it's probably an actual injury. So I work at Reynolds with their soccer academy, and I work at a Spymont with their high school academy, or with their high school rugby academy. And so I get kids come in and they say, oh, like I'm in so much pain, I'm injured. And I'm like, okay, like and we do this, and they're saying, ow, ow, ow. I'm like, okay, what is it out of 10? And they'll say, it's a 9. And I'm like, well, you weren't even limping. Like, is it a 9? And so then I'll show them one of these, and they'll look and they're like, oh, yeah, it's not a 9, it's a 4. Because especially with like younger athletes or kids that maybe suddenly are ramping up their training, they don't necessarily know how to rate this. If it's their first time having DOMS or their first time having an injury, that's when they give me really weird high numbers. And then we talk about it a little bit, and I show them this, and they're like, oh, actually, of sharp or not. Because if they're telling me that it is a 6, even after I show them this and we talk, then it's probably an injury and not just DOMS. But if they're like, yeah, you know what, it's a 2, it's not interfering with anything that I do, then it's probably DOMS. But there's definitely gray areas. So we can say it's not sharp, it's none of those things, the pain's a 3, it's sort of borderline. So here's some other sort of categories of things that we can look at when we're comparing, is it good sore, like I did some extra or change in activity sore, or it's injured. And these are going to be a little bit different depending on your sport or your activity. So the kind of on both sides of the body thing. An injury being, it says one side of the body, but if say you're a pitcher and you threw like way more pitches than you normally would or should, so you might not be injured, you might have DOMS, but it's only going to be probably on your pitching arm or only one leg. So that top one can be dependent on your sport. It's maybe more specific if you're like a cyclist or something. I pointed these two out because I find, especially with youth athletes, all the ones that I work with, so in general, age like 14 to 18 is what I work with regularly, and sort of these are the two that they find easiest to kind of understand. So good sore, or DOMS, is going to feel better after warm-up, like I said before. If we start to get it actually moving, you'll find some of that soreness goes away, you're increasing blood flow in that area, versus if it's injured, and you find that as you're practicing or as you're starting your workout, it hurts more, that's more likely an injury, and that's when you're going to stop. We'll talk about more what to do from there. And then the other ones, I find effects or form or don't effects or form. And so that's kind of that altered function in the sharp category. So if it's not functioning normally, it's going to affect your form. So maybe you're kind of cheating or compensating depending on what your sport is. Say you find, if you're playing soccer, say you find, I'm actually not doing anything with my right leg. I'm usually right leg dominant, but I'm doing all my passing and stuff off my left. So why am I doing that? Oh, my right leg hurts. So that's affecting your form, it's affecting how you play. And then, yeah, some of the other ones, like improves daily, that one's pretty obvious, but if you're, day 1 of DOMS and you're like, should I practice today? It's not going to be quite as obvious. Yeah, so let's say you've thought about your sharp, you've looked at that, kind of, is it both sides of the body? Is it going to get better with warm-up? Okay, yeah, I think it's just DOMS, I think it's just good sore. So what are we going to do about it? I love this motion is lotion thing, but we also kind of don't want to just repeat the exact same thing again that made us sore. So if I did, 10 100-meter sprints yesterday, and now I'm really sore, I'm probably not going to go out and do another 10 100-meter sprints right away. That doesn't mean I can't run at all, it doesn't mean that I'm not maybe going to do a couple sprints, but I don't want to do the exact same thing that made me sore. So say if I'm a baseball player and I'm really sore after doing all this pitching, then maybe I'm going to practice either a different pitch or not throw as many pitches, or I'll stick with regular offensive and defensive drills that day until I get a little bit less sore. And then, but you still want to do something so that it's going to increase your blood flow. That's sort of the main thing, is we want to get our body starting to heal itself. The more blood flow we have going through the area, then we've got nutrients and other things that are part of our healing process that are going to go through where it's sore. So we've actually decided it is an injury. It's not DOMS, it's bad pain. So there's sort of 2 categories of that. Acute, I'm sure most of you guys are aware of that. It happens instantly. You step off a curb and you roll your ankle, or you slide into a base and you jam your finger on the base. So that's like instant, it happens quickly. Chronic is something that happens over time. So they're both a traumatic force, but acute happens right away, and chronic is a bunch of traumatic forces that add up over time. And sometimes those are the ones that you're maybe not sure if it's good sore or bad sore, because it's kind of crept up and it's not as obvious how it happened. So we're going to talk a little bit more about how that happens. I wanted to kind of mention the difference between a strain and a sprain. This is something I explain to my kids a lot at school. A strain is in a ligament, so ligaments connect bones, and so those are going to be always at joints, and then a strain is an injury to our muscle. So that's going to happen like usually in the middle or close to a joint, but not right at a joint. So this is basically how injury happens with our trauma. So I'll explain it a little bit. Our blue line is what our body's used to doing. Range of motion, volume, intensity, your sport. Our red line is what we're asking our body to do. And basically when our red line goes above our blue line, that's when we get injured. So time here could be squished all the way up 1 second, that's acute traumatic force, or this time could be days, weeks, maybe months, spread out. Okay? And so let's say it's summer and I'm only practicing twice a week. And then school starts and I'm in my sports academy at school and now I'm practicing 7 times a week. So my body's used to this, now suddenly I've asked it to do this, and now I'm getting that chronic mini trauma forces that are causing me pain and injury. So if I don't change this red line, if I don't change what I'm forcing my body to do, then I'm stuck in this loop, and what I can do is even drop down. So if we get here where this pain and injury occurs, we have to change something. So maybe you change your intensity, so maybe the amount of practice time. So maybe you still go to 7 practices a week, but maybe you don't do everything at that practice. Or maybe there's one certain drill that you're finding hurts more. So you're going to change something to bring this red line down, but we also have to bring this blue line up. And so bringing that blue line up is where we can help. So where everyone at Speed Mechanics can help, and where us at the Athlete Center can help. Because if we don't bring this blue line back up, we're going to have to keep dropping this red line. And to get better in performance, so whether that's you're stronger, you're faster, you're throwing further, that's where that red line is higher, right? So we are going to help with this. And so that's where like the rehab and strength and conditioning comes in. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we got injured. I'm in that circle. So let's say we're here. We're stuck in this circle. I got injured. So peace and love is what we're going to do. Some of you guys have probably heard of RICE. Anyone know what RICE stands for? Yeah. Rest, ice, compress, elevate. So that's always been like the kind of go-to when you get injured. Recently, the British Journal of Sports Medicine has put this information out instead of RICE. So kind of when it first happens, your injury, you've decided it's not good sore, it's not DOMS, it's definitely an injury, peace. So we're going to protect it. So that might be that you just be careful, say you crouch around instead of walking on an ankle that's sore, or maybe you're just avoiding those certain activities that made it hurt. And then elevating. Avoid anti-inflammatories is a little bit of a maybe a contention topic, but what they found in recent research is that some of our body's natural inflammatory processes are actually leading us towards healing. So if we load up on Advil, then we're taking our inflammatory process, we're slowing it down, and if our inflammatory process is helping us heal, then we can also slow down our healing time. That doesn't mean that you can't take like something to help with your pain if it's hurting a lot, but you don't want to take a ton because you could slow down your healing. And then compression, so we're wrapping it, and then education. So I don't mean, it's kind of blurry, but it says here, your body knows best. Your bodies are built to heal themselves, so sometimes getting in the way of that can slow down the healing. So educate, avoid passive stuff that can sort of get in the way of your natural healing process. I like to make sure that I'm empowering my athletes and my clients that I see at the Athlete Center to heal themselves. I don't want them coming back to me to get massaged to feel better. Don't want them to be dependent on me. I want them to learn to look after themselves. And so that's where education comes in, and especially when it comes with younger athletes. They might think that, oh, I'm just gonna put some ice on it or like massage it out and it's gonna get better. But that's not necessarily the case. So that's sort of our initial stages piece, and then love is sort of 48 hours and beyond. So that could be a couple days or it could be weeks or months. And so I really like this one because load, so we're starting to go back to regular activity, optimism, so having a good attitude about it. We'll talk a little bit about that more. Vascularization, so that basically just means cardio, like we want to increase blood flow in that area that's injured. And then exercise. So if you actually look at love, 3 of these means exercise, and one of them means have a good attitude about it. This one can be really, really hard. Like, I broke my hand 5 weeks ago, and in the first softball game of the year, I really wanted to play softball. I couldn't throw, and I couldn't bat. But I could catch, so I would just go to every practice, and I would catch, give someone else the ball, and they would throw. So you have to really feel good about what you can do. There's going to be a lot of stuff that you can't do if you're injured, depending on what your injury is. So finding things that you can do, especially as like a parent or a coach or a trainer, that's another role that we fill, helping our athletes find stuff that they can do, whether it's in their sport specifically, or whether it's in the gym, or whether it's even just there supporting their teammates. They don't want to just be sitting at home alone and missing out on what they want to do. So attitude is a big, big part of it. Okay, so this number one question that I get after I have someone who's injured. How long is it going to take till I can play again? How long does it take before I can run again? When can I go for a hike? And obviously the answer is it depends. So when it's acute injury that happens like that, sometimes it can be a little bit more predictable. There's a lot of research on lots of different injuries, and so you could kind of look up like first-degree ankle sprain, and there's research on how long that takes. But it can be, like I said, anywhere from 3 days to 6 weeks and on and on and on. Our body is constantly changing and remodeling, so it even could be years. You don't have any more pain, but your body's still adapting to where an injury was. And it's definitely going to depend on how hard the athlete or this person works on that peace and love. So if they totally skip the love and they're not getting their blood flow increased, they're not loading it, then it's going to be closer to the longer end of the timeline than the shorter end of the timeline. When it comes to those chronic injuries that are the mini traumas adding up, that's when those ones are a little bit tougher, the when can I play question, because often there'll be like a certain specific thing that will cause more pain. So let's say it's a runner, and they only have their plantar fascia pain when they run over 5K. So it's going to be super sensitive to that amount of load. So we'll have to slowly creep it up and keep it, say, under 5K. Or it only hurts when I lift more than 200 pounds. So with chronic injury, and I get this from coaches a lot, like, are they injured or are they not injured? Well, that's a tough question because it's going to be a wavy line. You saw that line that I drew. It wasn't a straight line going up. So especially with chronic injuries, and acute too, but your peace and love is going to guide you hopefully like this in an upward direction towards playing again. And a lot of times I'll send kids that aren't 100% fixed on the field to do some on-field training. Like I said, you can do what you can do, and as long as you know what to avoid. And that's, again, where the conversations between the parent, whoever's helping the athlete with their recovery, and the coach and the athlete, all those conversations are really important, so that the coach knows that maybe this kid with the ankle sprain is allowed to throw and do some swings, but not allowed to cut or run the bases, for example, in baseball. Or with soccer, like I have a lot of kids with muscle strains, and I say, okay, well, you're not going to take shots today, and you're not going to do like speed and agility, but you can work on your juggling, you can work on your passing. So that kind of on-field training and rehab, in a center like this or in a center like we have, can happen at the same time. There's no, yes, we're injured, no, we're not injured. So I wanted to talk a little bit about rehab and kind of that process. But I have to stand up. Everybody's going to stand up. So, especially with muscle injuries, people want to stretch them right away. So this is a muscle. It's going to get longer when we stretch it, and it's going to come together when we contract it. So when people have a muscle injury and right away they want to stretch it, this is getting longer. What do you think is going to happen to this space? It's going to get bigger. So I'm going to show you guys what I tell people right away. So let's say this is my hamstring. So it's the back of my leg. So what I will tell people is, so if this is my hamstring stretch, so I want everyone put one leg in front of them. You're gonna send your hips back until you feel a bit of a stretch in the back of your thigh, that hamstring area. Now, push your heel into the ground. Like 10% effort, like not that much. 10% effort, you're pushing your heel into the ground. And then come back up. So that's turning your hamstring on. So if I go here and stretch it, I'm gonna be pulling these apart, maybe making that bigger. But if I take it to that edge of that stretch position and then make it turn on, then I can work on starting to close that gap. Not that that's gonna happen instantly, but it's gonna be safer to make that muscle turn on in a stretch position than just trying to stretch it. You guys can sit back down. Thank you. So, not stretching right away is something that I drill into my athletes and people that are injured that come in, because it's just something that people just automatically do. I see it all the time. They just automatically, oh my quad, I'm gonna try and stretch it. And so we want to be careful that we're not then making it worse. So a little bit about the goals of rehab. So protecting the area, so basically not making it worse, and maintaining range of motion. So this is a tough one because sometimes it can be like, oh well, it's sore when I bend my wrist that way. Well, we want to bend it that way as far as we can without making it sore. So that would be something that we would help with. So if someone came in with an injury and they're not sure how to maintain range of motion, then we would give them drills and stuff like that to help. And then sort of the love. Again, this is where we help. But improving range of motion and making sure that above and below. So when I broke my hand was injured, but Sarah helped me get my range of motion of my wrist and my elbow back. So those are just as important. We want to make sure that we're not paying attention to the whole area. So if I hurt my knee, for example, I want to make sure that I'm not losing range of motion in my ankle and my hip, because then we're going to be rehabbing 3 areas instead of just one, if that sort of makes sense. And then, so this would be kind of a timeline here, improving range of motion immediately, and then getting stronger in that area. And then this is a huge one. Let's not have that same thing happen again. So that education piece comes in there, but getting that red line, or that blue line, that's what our body's used to and what our body's good at, higher. So we want to stress that area that got injured once we've got this stuff. Stress it that got injured so that it doesn't happen again. I had probably like a month into the COVID thing, I had a student from Reynolds email me and she said, you know, I've hurt my ankle a whole bunch of times in the last 2 years and I'm not going to be playing soccer for a while because of COVID. What can I do to make sure that I don't sprain my ankle when we go back in September? Awesome. So I sent her a list of stuff and some videos to work on, and she's since messaged me and said, oh, my ankles are feeling like way better. I can do so much more with them. And she wasn't injured, but she knew that she needed to not let it happen again. So I wanted to kind of talk about an example of how to go through that rehab process, but maybe I want also to answer you guys some questions. So I think I'll skip this for now. Is there anything, question-wise, that anybody wants clarified? No? Would anything in particular that I talked about? Really? No?
When you say vascularization, are you saying instead of, the rice with ice, are you saying more heat to improve circulation?
Heat, so heat would be sort of one of those passive treatments for improving circulation. So it would, but vascularization, we're basically talking about like full body blood flow increase. And so, I mean, if depending on the injury, like if it's a lower body, like major knee injury, for example, you're not going to run or bike for cardio, but you could still like lift upper body weights, for example. But yeah, go back to that. Yeah, it's kind of blurry on there, but it's basically pain-free cardiovascular activities to increase full body blood flow. So you're right, he will do it locally in that area, but ideally we'd have it the whole body, and that kind of even follows up with my joint above and below, Because if my knee's sore and I'm just heating my knee, what about my hip and ankle kind of thing? But if I'm getting full body circulation, then that's gonna hit that. Good question though. Okay, well I'm gonna go through a little bit of an example to talk about what we did today. So let's say I had a rugby player come into the clinic on Monday and there was a game on Saturday, and he was playing a position he's never played before. He did a lot of passes, but he also took a lot of hits because it's rugby. So not deformed, otherwise he would have been going to the hospital. Sharp. So he's got pain, more than 3, and can't lift his over his head. So there's altered function. So we already know that it's probably not just playing a position that I haven't played before and doing more passing than normal. It's probably not good sore, it's probably not DOMS. He's probably got an injury. So immediately we're going to talk about how to maintain range of motion. So I might give him some like elbow stuff to do. Depending, we might even have to do a sling as our protection. And then from there, we're basically going to do love. So that's when I would have him into the gym and be like, okay, what can we do? So it's an arm injury. Maybe we can still do lower body stuff. Maybe we can still do squats. We can still do lunges. We're going to get the full body going, and then we can still work on the wrist, and we can still work on the elbow. And then from there is kind of our and beyond, and that's where the increasing strength at that area, getting our range of motion at that area. So I would give him more intense stuff to do, and that actually starts to incorporate the shoulder. And then from there, we would try to get that let's not let it happen again section, and we would have him go back to the field and doing modified practice. So maybe this drill, and this drill you don't do, but you can do this, and this. And then we talk to the coach, and we talk to the parents, and we give them, everyone makes a plan together. Yeah.
Is that called prehab? When you talk about prehab, is that kind of what that is?
So prehab, sort of. Prehab would be almost anticipating an injury. It's not necessarily specific to maybe one you've had before, but like this girl from soccer who called me or that emailed me and said, you know, I've hurt my ankle before and I want to make sure it doesn't happen again. That would be considered prehab for sure. But if she was sort of coming back from an ankle injury, technically we wouldn't classify it as prehab. That's just end stage, what we call return to play rehab. Yeah. Anyone have any other questions about anything? I want to go back to, because I know this is going to be one of the major take-home things. But yeah, so I have some cards. So if anyone has questions to think of later, they can shoot me an email or ask Kyle, and he can forward it on to me. That's my email address there, and that's our website. So if you're interested in any of the things that we do, or you're injured and you need help, we have online booking. So you can go on there and find one of us and book an athletic therapy session. Sarah, is there anything that you wanted to add about the Athlete Center or about
No, I don't think so.
topics?
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming today, and huge thanks to Kyle for inviting us to share what we do. The space is amazing, and I can't wait to do some more collaborations and see all the amazing youth athletes come out of here. So
Yeah.
and then Rochelle and I can stick around for a little bit if you guys have any more
Yeah. If you don't want to
individual
show
questions